Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the second to last day of the SPFBOX author interview panel blitzes. Today, we have two brand new SPFBO authors for the 10th year who are going to introduce themselves in just a second. We got Alan on, we have Jeff on. Um, this has been so much fun all week long. And if you're tuning in and you see the title, this is part 18. So there are 17 other panels. If you have missed them, you can catch up on the playlist at the very top of my channel with all the ones that Mike and Ro did with Bald and Balding and all the ones that I've done. And we still have one more after this one today. And then we have a few tomorrow. So there's still some to come before we wrap up with over 75 authors met. So it's been so cool just going around and meeting everybody, hearing about your books. Jeff, welcome back to the channel. We've
Thank
chatted
you.
before,
Yeah.
but not for this year's SPFBO. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with SPFBO so far, and then what book you are bringing to this year?
Okay. Well, I'm new to the SPFBO. I've never actually gotten into one, so I did try once before, but it was just so quick. But I have followed the SPFBO, and usually it's pretty good. And but I was in the SPSFC at one time, or a couple of times actually. I've had my book in there. This is the first time I've gotten into like a fantasy sort of thing. But yeah, I entered my book, the Burning Fire Rises. It's like I kind of like think of it as Doctor Who meets the X Files, kind of like thing. So yeah, I usually write more of a science fiction, but I've dipped into like fantasy, and this book that is based on my characters of Professor Dark and Miss Shadow, they are sort of like in the fantasy genre. So this is kind of new to me coming into this sort of um, area. But yeah, and I'm a Canadian author, so I'm way up here.
So is yours this year a science fantasy?
This is more of a sort of like a supernatural dark fantasy urban thing,
Oh,
with a
nice.
little bit of science fiction maybe into it, but it's more, there is some like fantastical elements to it. Like Professor Dark is this mysterious figure who just happens to be, like coming into like these situations and solves things with his assistant, Miss Shadow, who herself is also another mysterious character. So I try to keep them as mysterious as possible without going too much into their origins, because to me, I tend to like the classic Doctor Who, where it was you didn't know who they were, and that's pretty much how my book is going. I do have a cover of it here. It's only on ebook right now because I'm still working on the getting the
What a
print.
pretty cover.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about
That's
that. Like,
okay. That's good. That's a great introduction, and nice to see you like get into sci-fi or get out of sci-fi into fantasy, and then throw it into SPFO and just be like, "Here you go. Let's
yeah,
see
I
how
am
it
trying
really
to get
is."
into more fantasy. I'm trying to write a barbarian fantasy as such, but I think I'll just make it a novella to start with to wet my feet in there, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. Well, welcome to the fantasy side. Hopefully, somebody has cookies somewhere. Oh, and Alan, how about you? Tell us a little bit about your experience with SPFBO and what book you're bringing in this year.
Well, first of all, thanks for doing these. I've actually enjoyed watching the previous ones, seeing the people from all around the world. It is really an international event, more so than I thought. Um, but I first picked up on SPFBO last year when I started following Mark, Mark Lawrence on Facebook, of course. Very prolific, very famous author in the fantasy world, anyway. And I really appreciate this. Uh, the concept behind it and allowing self-published authors this kind of exposure, and I think that's really what it's meant to do, is get the self-published community out there and get them exposed to the rest of the world where they may not have been exposed before. But so this is my first year with that entering, and I did like the format this year. because it was a lot easier than last year. I think if you weren't
Yeah, you got to
put in
sleep.
the yeah. Yeah, so I threw my hat in the ring. I threw my book. The paperback version came out May 14th, Darkness of the Northern Sky. The ebook was published last year, but that version has been revamped and reformatted and was republished early May. And it's been a growing process with this book, I can tell you. But I was very grateful to see my name on the list. I think I'm with the critiquing chemist, and the other one I can't remember her name.
Lynn's books, yeah.
Yeah. This book is well, it started out as a short story in 1999. It was 1,300 words. Portions of that story are a chapter in this book now. I used that story as the foundation for the novel when I was introduced to National Novel Writing Month in 2004. So that should kind of give you an idea how old this particular book is. I picked it up in 2019 again and said, you know what, it's time to get back to writing. I've been writing since I was in middle school, which is a very long time ago. So I'm very happy to see this finally in paperback, the hardcover. I'm working on that. I've done it all from beginning to end, which is kind of my style. But yeah, it's great to be here doing this. So
yeah, and good. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You're right. Meeting everybody from all around the world's been fantastic. And so many first time SPFBO followers this year. You and Jeff included. You're in a great blog, by the way. Is there any chemistry in your book?
No.
So you're not worried about the critiquing chemist reading your book and being like,
this book is straight up sword and sorcery.
Nice.
Fantasy. It's what I cut my teeth on, with Elric, Michael Moorcock, and Fafford and the Grey Mouser, Fritz Lieber's books, and of course, speaking of barbarians, Robert Howard, Conan, and all those. So that's my generation, and that's what I cut my teeth on. So that's what I wrote. I didn't write a chunker. I wasn't going to write a chunker. Had no intention of ever writing a chunker. So I prefer something I can put in my back pocket. Preferably with a yellow spine, from Daw Books. So.
Oh yeah. And you learned a lesson that I wish I had done before SPFBO last year. I entered The Vow That Twisted Fate last year, which was my debut novel, and I released the revised, expanded, better edition about a month after the entries for SPFBO. So the version that went in was the unfixed version. And so I was like, okay, yeah, but I didn't plan on doing SPFBO. One of my friends was like, oh, throw it in there. So I threw it in there. So if you're watching and you're a writer thinking about doing this next year and you have a book, maybe it's a little older, you're going to revise it first before you put it in.
Well, I mean, you are, yeah, and you got some feedback on that too. I'm sure some pretty quality feedback. So
yeah, which was great because then it helps you know that you're going the right direction with your revisions. You're growing in the right way, and that was fantastic, for sure. So Jeff, first year SPFBO for you as well. What is your feeling about the blog you're in? You're in Covers with Cassidy, who's an amazing booktuber. Have you watched any of Cassidy's reviews prior to this?
I've seen a few of hers. I know she's pretty good with like the fantasies and stuff like that. I honestly didn't think I was gonna get in, to be honest, because I wasn't sure if this would meet the criteria or not. But I mean, there is a subcategory, so it probably made it in that way. I was surprised Byrne didn't get in for his book, which caught me off guard because I'm like, he's not in and I am. I'm like, what?
It's all
but I'm glad I am. I'm glad I am. It's interesting that I got in, but I'm accepting of it. So it's like I'll do whatever, But yeah, I have watched the contest and I've seen the highs and lows of it. So
yeah,
but, I'm just grateful I got in. to be
Do you have
honest.
any strategy for like not obviously not to win because once the book goes in
Yes.
SPFBO, the book's in.
I
But
mean, they
there's a
still have a
whole
long way to
other
go
aspect.
yet. So yeah, I have no strategy. To be honest with
Just
you,
go with
I
the
have no
flow.
strategy. I wasn't strategizing for this at all. So now I'm like, oh, I guess I better think of something to get this going. I'm not sure, but maybe lowering the price of my book for now and getting it out there and just get some
Yeah.
readers going on. And
Adding SPFBOX participant to like
yeah,
your social media lines and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is a major thing to get into this. So it's really an honor to get into something like this because it does have a huge following.
Yeah. But that is a very valid strategy, even for people who've done this before. It's like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to go with the flow, I'm going to do what I can and not do what I can't. Alan, how about you? Did you come in with any strategy for like the social media side, the reader side, the author community side?
Not really. I saw it pop up and I was like, okay, cool. I can enter, and it's more of a lottery this year, so there's a chance, that people can get in. So luck of the draw kind of sort of thing. But so I threw the book in, but at that time I had no strategy because I was in the throes of getting this out in paperback and working through my cover designer and going through the proofs and et cetera, et cetera. So that's where my brain was at that time. But no strategy. I like the idea of putting the updating the social media and the websites and even Amazon with SPFBO participant. I don't have any strategies as far as the ebook is concerned because it's already priced at, I think, at the right price for most ebooks for beginning authors, and I'm on Kindle Unlimited, so I release it on Amazon exclusively for the first 90 days. So anybody that's a subscriber can just go read it for free. They don't have to purchase it at this point. So lowering the price to $1 or something like that doesn't really make sense to me at the moment.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we'll see. I'm a little concerned. Maybe that's not the right word about the blogs I'm in, because my book is not really geared toward a female target audience, right? Because it is more sword and sorcery, and it's told in first person, and the main character is male, of course. So I've read some of the reviews on the Critiquing Chemist and the books that she's been reading. And I don't know if this is going to be the right fit for them, but so hopefully they'll find enough meaning in the book, because it's not all just blood and guts. There's it's kind of a story where he's trying to destroy an enemy that he thinks is the enemy, but the enemy's really within, kind of story. So there's some deep, insightful things. He refuses to ask for help. He won't accept help when it's given until there's a turning point where it's just necessary. So hopefully they'll find some meaning in that. It's not your typical, it's not a Conan book, for example, where he just goes in and slays people and wins the girl. It's nothing like that.
Well, I think there's a good chance. There's a good mix. If you look at the finalists from prior years, there's a good mix of different, male main characters, female main characters. And a lot of the blogs seem to be objective for the most part. I mean, obviously, if you're going to represent a book, then you're going to pick one that you liked more, even if they're both better quality. But someone on the finalist panel said it earlier last week that this isn't a book where this book is better than this book per se. It's like, oh, well, I wrote a better book than you, as much as the quality overall and what's celebrating the quality of indie books, really. And so, yeah, I'm going to wish you the best, though, because I know they do some very thoughtful reviews. So even if it doesn't go on, you're going to probably get a really thoughtful review.
Yeah, I mean, at least I will get that, right? Can I use that for my marketing?
Yes, absolutely. SD, I'm a girl and grew up on sword and sorcery books with male main characters because there weren't that many with female lead, but also because I love the genre. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's the aspect that while the primary antagonist is female, the Queen of Shadows, so both of us here have shadow in our characters. All the power characters are all female too. So they're in positions of power. Yeah, that was unintentional and intentional. Once I saw that theme kind of arise, I was like, okay, let's follow that because that's where it's going. I'm a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants.
Yes, same here.
my 50,000 words was my outline, right? And I pulled it apart and reassembled it once I found plot points, and just kind of that's where it all fell together. I cannot outline to save my life until after I have something down.
Yeah.
Mine's in my head. I just write it out as it goes. It just, I know how the story's supposed to begin and then how it's supposed to end. It's just the middle part I got to figure out.
Right.
But,
and I love it when characters evolve and surprise me in the process. You know, like, oh, I didn't know you were related to so and so. That's kind of interesting. And this was intended as a standalone, but I'm 150,000 words in the book too, so it's going to be part of a trilogy as that journey continues. But it can be read as a standalone. There's no cliffhanger at the end.
Yeah.
So it just keeps streaming out. He's got more to tell. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, more to come. And Jeff, how about you? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your main character who we're following into your book? I'm very curious because I picked up one of your sci-fis in the past, but I haven't read this one. So who are we meeting?
Okay, so this is supposed to be about Professor Dark and Miss Shadow, but I wanted to introduce them in, like, I have my collection of their adventures in the like a prequel book, but I wanted to create a full novel of their journey, but I wanted to do it through the eyes of another character, which is Special Agent John Mathers, who comes to investigate a suspicious spontaneous combustion situation. And he waltzes in there, and who should show up but Professor Dark and Miss Shadow, as they're investigating it themselves. So they kind of collide. And it's kind of through his eyes and maybe a little bit through each of theirs. So they enter his shadowy realm world, where it takes them, like, this agent is just blown away by what they're going to be encountering. It gets into, like, the dark, kind of nightmarish kind of stuff sometimes. So like I said, it's fantasy because they're stepping into two worlds, our world and their world, and they have to figure out who's causing this sort of spontaneous combustion situation. And of course, Professor Dark is quite the character, and Miss Shadow is his sort of protege, student who's pretty much following his lead, but she does have her own unique talents as well. She's very gifted, and he's always mindful of her. And of course, John Mathers, he's just trying to ride along and trying to figure this out as he goes. So he's pretty much like the audience coming with them to see what's going on in this world and how it unfolds. Originally, I was going to write the entire arc, but I said it's just too much, and I had to break the book up into two sections. So I had written part one, and I'll write part two later on because it's just too massive a book. Usually I write short stories for them, which are on Audible as well. They do have 3 of the short stories from the collection on Audible, which was challenging to find the right narrator for that. So there's 3 different narrators for these ones. But yeah, I'm trying to create books that are with these characters, and they'll go along. I'm trying to build up a sort of series for them. Eventually, I'd like to maybe go back to novella form because it seems to work best for them. But a full book is just challenging for me for these characters because there's a lot to go into, and I'm not getting any younger, so I got to get it out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, you're in the works, and so if people pick up the book for SPFBOX, they know that there's more coming down the line.
And if they want to go backtrack, there's this book as well to go back on, and the Audibles, so you get a feel for who they are.
Yeah. So, Alan, you talked a little bit about your characters and sort of their growth, but who's the main character we're meeting? Who are we following into the story?
The story revolves around the main character. His name is Rini Soltari. He's a commander general in the Northern Lands Army. He's got quite the backstory, apparently, but really it starts off. He's jaded with battle. I think that's how I put it in the blurb, where he's done fighting. Right, he has an experience. It opens up. I can't remember the term, but it's inaction. Right, he's right in the middle of the action, and he has an experience where he realizes that death is imminent for him on the battlefield. And he's got a wife and a daughter back home, and he returns home to hang up the sword for good and just settle down on the generational farm. Now, I don't go into too much detail. This is like in the first few pages, so that's all I'm giving you here. But then eventually the city that he's in, the main city, is attacked by the hordes and the enemy of the Northern Lands, the Rogues Army, and his wife and daughter ultimately end up getting killed. So it switches kind of to a revenge story, but revenge is not something that he can actually achieve. He gathers up, even though he's tired of battle, he gathers up the forces of the Northern Lands and follows her into the snowy wastes up north. And there his whole army is pretty much decimated by her sorcery. And it's just him and a handful of soldiers. And this is all in the blurb, so I'm still not giving any spoilers away. But that's where the journey actually begins, right? So he's got to survive getting back to the city to remove the Queen of Shadows, who's overtaken his land, and he just can't get back there. He fights off insanity. He fights off the others that are going insane around him. He faces death and is almost killed many, many times through his lack of willing to accept help when help is needed, when could really help him. And he's just all gung ho about getting there and killing her so that he can fulfill the promise he made to his wife and daughter. And that's really the premise around it. So the journey takes him pretty much all around the world that was created, the different lands, family that he has in other parts. That's all told in first person. And so you really get a deep, you get deep into the core of the character at times, where he's just like, I'm done. This is it. This is my end. And this is, either I accept it or I don't. And he continues on, obviously, because it wouldn't be much of a story if he just quits after, chapter 9. But, it's, I think that's where the story really lies. It's in that journey around and the people he meets and the mind, the worldview he has that is constantly changing as he continues moving around to the different places in the world, till eventually, we come to the climax where he is retaking his lands, retaking the city where he lives, and ultimately, fulfilling that promise that he made. And there's just a lot I don't want to give away too much here, because anything I say may trigger something else and may lead to some spoilers for some people. But along the way, there's foul black creatures that are being created by the sorceress. She's everywhere in shadow, but there's no real battle scenes until the end. It's just about getting back there he's anxious to get back there and complete this journey, going headlong into battle, which is not smart for someone who's achieved the rank that he did. He's just so hell bent on, fulfilling that promise is driving him, and it almost kills him several times. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So we got some great motivation and conflict and tension there. Like, do I kill this person solely to make up for having, what they've done? Or
yeah, and that's kind of the crux of it. Like I mentioned earlier, she's the antagonist, right? And the creatures she created, he's got to get through all that, and he's also fending off the people he was fighting at the beginning of the story, right, where he had that death realization, because she's made alliances with that particular army. So it's all mixed in together. You got these hideous creatures, and then the Rogues Army, which is from the Eastern lands that he's also fighting. They're trying to take back their land. There's a whole backstory of how his people landed in that particular area. But the enemy, really, the thing he's really got to overcome is that enemy within. That really, once he overcomes that, then he, has that moment of clarity and kind of, makes a little bit better decisions.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for hopping on, for chatting with me at 8:30 in the morning about your SPFBO books and the contest. Because I know that that's the first thing you want to do on a Friday morning after a long week is get up at 8:30 and talk about. But
oh, I was already up.
So was I. I got kids. I got to go to school, so I was up already.
Yeah, I got 4 kids and work. So.
But if you're watching
Jeff,
and you would like to check out Jeff's book or Alan's book, in the description box is a link to both of their books, so you can grab them. And there's also a link to Mark Lawrence's full list of SPFBO authors. I put that there because Mark organizes this event. That's the official blog. He does this for free every year. And we're super grateful as us being participants for what Mark and the team and the bloggers do. So if you want to follow the official updates, that is where you're going to go to track how Alan's doing, how Jeff's doing, how I'm doing, and all the other panelists are doing. Spoilers, we're all sort of nervous, but
we are.
Yeah, we don't want to see that word cut, right? In the next 2 months. We don't want to see the word cut next to the first review, right?
It's like get in there and you're like, oh, done already. I was like the SPFC, so I was like, oh, I get in there and it's like, God, it's like, damn, I didn't make it.
I started reading your book yesterday, Jeff. I like the story, what I'm reading so far. And Katherine, I got yours too to start reading. I read a little bit on Amazon, and then it is not my style, but what I read on the read it first on Amazon, the little part, I was really caught up in the story. I was like, this is so not me, but I'm going to give it a whirl. So I went and got a copy of it.
You're a trooper for powering through.
I am not, because I know what your book is about, and it's just like that is not something I would ever pull off the shelf. But the writing, I mean, I think that's the crux of this whole thing. The writing was very intriguing and very well done. So congrats.
Oh, thank you so much.
It pulled someone like me into this world of romantic
yeah. And I feel like that's the biggest attempt I've made toward romance before I accepted, you know what? Most of my books are just not going to be romantic.
Right.
But it is a lot
there's
of
no
fun
romance in mine.
I try not to get on romance too much because then I know I'll get critiqued for it, so I don't know.
I felt sort of like you, Jeff. I was trying to push out of my comfort zone, and get into something that I knew a lot of readers would really love. And so it was nice to try out with Splitting Dawn. And the series is almost done. There's another book that's supposed to come out for this fall. And between that and the 5 novellas that are already out, that'll wrap that series. So
yeah, I'm a bit behind because I had carpal tunnel syndrome and I've had some surgery on my arms. And then I got in a car crash a couple of weeks ago. So
oh no.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you're doing okay, and hopefully you keep doing better.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and everybody who's tuning in. There's another chat coming up at 11 a.m. Central, so in about 2 hours, and then 2 or 3 more panels tomorrow, and that will finish off our Blitz. So thank you so much. Take care.
Good luck, everybody.
Good luck.